The 2:17 a.m. notification was not a sound. It was a vibration, a mosquito wing buzz against the Italian marble of the nightstand. It was the only thing that moved in the suffocating, climate-controlled silence of the penthouse. Carolyn Pierce, 6 months pregnant and wide awake, stared at the second iPhone. The one her husband, Michael, claimed was just for international markets. The screen was black, but the preview text glowed with a venomous intimacy. Sienna, the Carlisle, 9 p.m. Don't be late. In that instant, the silence of their life, bought with $50 million of Central Park West real estate, became a tomb. The silence in the penthouse was the most expensive thing Michael Pierce owned. It was a deep, velvety void, purchased with triple-paned acoustic glass, 6,000 square feet of air high above Manhattan, and a staff that moved like shadows. For Carolyn, now Carolyn Pierce, for the past 3 years, that silence had once felt like peace. Now, it felt like pressure, pushing the air from her lungs. She stood in the center of their cavernous walk-in closet, a space larger than her first apartment in D.C. Racks of Michael's custom-tailored suits, Xenia, Brioni, Tom Ford, stood like a regimented army on one side. Her own wardrobe, a vibrant collection of couture he had hand-picked for her, faced his in a riot of color and silk. He used to call her his exotic bird, and this was her gilded cage, lined with Dior and Chanel. Carolyn ran a hand over her belly, where the slight, firm curve of her 6-month pregnancy was now undeniable. This child, their son, was supposed to be the final, perfect piece of their perfect life, the heir to the Pierce private equity dynasty. But the joy she'd felt during the first trimester had hardened into a cold, heavy knot in her stomach. The betrayal hadn't come as a sudden, shattering event. It was a slow poison seeping into the foundations of their marriage. It started with the little things, the late nights at the office that stretched into mornings, the urgent business trips to Hong Kong and Berlin that left him smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. A faint, cloying scent of Frederick Moll's Portrait of a Lady. Too sophisticated, too deliberate to be an accident. It was the way he angled his phone away from her, a screen that had once been open to her now turned into a dark, guarded secret. Michael was a creature of habit and towering arrogance. That combination, Carolyn was beginning to realize, would be his undoing. He believed he was too clever to get caught, and that she was too docile, too in love, to ever suspect him. He was wrong on both counts. The first real crack in the facade had appeared a month ago. He had left his secondary phone, the one he claimed was for international business, charging on his nightstand. An almost laughably amateur mistake. At 2:17 a.m., as Carolyn lay awake, wrestling with pregnancy-induced insomnia, it lit up. Not with a call or a text, but a calendar notification. Sienna, the Carlisle, 9 p.m. Don't be late. Sienna. The name was elegant, exotic. It sounded expensive, just like everything else in Michael's life. Carolyn's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. Her first instinct was to grab the phone, wake him, and scream, to shatter the placid surface of their lives with the jagged edges of her pain. But a deeper, colder instinct took over. An instinct she thought she'd buried long ago from a life before Michael. Before she was Carolyn Pierce, society wife and philanthropist in training. She was once Carolyn Reed, one of the sharpest opposition researchers in Washington, D.C. Her job hadn't been accounting. It had been deconstruction. She dismantled political careers. She followed the real money, the dark money, to uncover the rot buried beneath layers of complex pacts and corporate lies. She didn't just hunt financial predators. She hunted the politicians they owned. She'd been the one to find the offshore account that ended a senator's career, the one who traced a charitable donation back to a Russian oligarch, effectively killing a cabinet nomination. She'd given it all up for Michael. She'd been burned out, cynical, and tired of the fight. He had seemed so solid, so charming, so real. He promised her a life of peace, a life where she wouldn't have to fight anymore. She had believed she'd found a love that made her old life of suspicion and spreadsheets feel grey and irrelevant. Now, staring at that glowing screen, she realized she hadn't given it up. She had only been dormant. That night, she didn't sleep. She slipped out of bed, her movements as silent as the staff she so rarely saw. She went to her home office, a sterile white space she rarely used. She turned on her encrypted laptop, a relic from her old life that Michael found adorably paranoid, and began to dig. She didn't start with his phone. She started with his money. Money never lied. Michael's finances were a labyrinth of shell corporations, offshore holding companies, and blind trusts designed to minimize taxes and maximize secrecy. To anyone else, it would be impenetrable. To Carolyn, it was a language she spoke fluently. Her mistake had been love. She had willingly blinded herself. She'd accepted his explanation that this complexity was just smart business. Her greatest weapon was his ultimate arrogance. When they married, he had given her access to the master accounts of the family office. It was a grand romantic gesture, a symbol of their partnership. He never imagined she possessed the skill to actually comprehend the system, let alone navigate it. He thought her Oppo research job was about gossiping and reading voting records. He had no idea she could read a wire transfer confirmation like a page of poetry. For weeks, she spent her nights mapping his empire while he slept, or while he was out at one of his business dinners. She was a ghost in the machine, tracing wire transfers, analyzing credit card statements, and cross-referencing expense reports. And there she was, Sienna Laru. The name appeared again and again. A penthouse apartment at Hudson Yards, paid for by a Delaware LLC, MJP Holdings III, linked directly to Michael. A black Amex Centurion card, a supplementary on an account Carolyn had never seen, racking up charges at Bergdorf's, Cartier, and five-star hotels around the globe. Flights that mirrored Michael's own travel schedule, but always in first class, one row behind him. He wasn't just having an affair. He was funding a parallel life. The pain was immense, a physical blow that left her breathless. She would sit in her cold office at 4 a.m., one hand on her swelling belly, the other scrolling through hotel folios from the peninsula in Hong Kong. The baby would kick, as if sensing her distress, and the tears would finally come. Silent, hot tears of humiliation. But the strategist in her was detached. Pain was data. It fueled her. The sheer scale of the deception was staggering. It wasn't just about the money. It was the meticulous planning, the years of lies woven into every "I love you," every gentle touch on her stomach, each whispered promise. Each smile he gave her across candle-lit dinners was now revealed as part of a grand illusion, one she had lived in without question. Her stomach turned with the weight of those memories, now curdled and tainted. She dug deeper, past the girlfriend, into the real fortress, his business. She found the leverage points, the hidden debts, the secret partners. She found the contingency folder, buried on a server he thought was air-gapped. It was his blackmail folder. Dirt on his competitors, on corrupt politicians, even on board members of his own firm. This was how he won. Not by being smarter, but by being dirtier. She now understood the man she had married. He wasn't a king. He was a parasite, and she was just his latest host. But the true catalyst, the event that turned her from a woman betrayed into something far more dangerous, came last Tuesday. Michael was on a conference call in his home office. He called it his skiff, a soundproof room he'd had built for sensitive negotiations. The heavy oak doors were shut. He believed they were impenetrable. They weren't. Not if you were standing right outside, and not if the door was, by some miracle of fate, left a fraction of an inch ajar. Carolyn was walking past on her way to the kitchen, her bare feet silent on the cold marble floor. She was about to pass the door when she heard his voice, low, sharp, and stripped of its usual charm. He wasn't talking about acquisitions or investor calls. He was talking about her. The prenup is ironclad, Kenji. She gets $1 million. That's it. She recognized the name. Kenji Tanaka, Michael's notoriously cutthroat attorney, a man with the soul of a shark. Carolyn froze, her hand flattening against the hallway wall. Her blood turned to ice. But the pregnancy complicates things, Michael continued, his tone like flint. The optics are awful. We can't have a messy public divorce, not with the new fund launching. A pause. Then the words that stopped her heart. So we control the narrative. We build a case, unstable, hormonal, emotionally erratic. We'll get a psych eval ordered. We'll prove she's an unfit mother. Unfit mother. The phrase struck her like a slap across the face. He was going to take her son. Kenji's voice came through the speaker, calm and deadly. The prenup gives her a one-time payout. She'll fight it, of course. But once we have the leverage of the child, she'll fold. She'll take the deal and disappear. Supervised visits, twice a year. If she behaves, her knees buckled. She reached for the wall to steady herself, her breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. The walls that once protected her now felt like they were closing in, silent witnesses to a betrayal so deep it hollowed her out. Every cell in her body screamed to storm in, to confront him, to claw his eyes out. But something stronger held her back. Not fear. Not grief. Clarity. Carolyn had to clamp her hand over her mouth to stop the sob from escaping. But it wasn't a sob of sorrow. It was a sob of pure, incandescent rage. He wasn't just planning to leave her. He was planning to erase her, to paint her as delusional, to take the only thing that still mattered in the world. He was going to use their child as a weapon to destroy her. In that moment, standing in the cold, silent hallway of her gilded cage, the heartbroken wife died. The strategist was reborn, armed with a mother's fury. He wanted to leave her with nothing. She would leave him with less. She backed away from the door, as silent as she had approached. Her mind, moments ago, a maelstrom of pain, was now a chessboard. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was war. And she, Carolyn Reed, had never lost a war. She went to her office and locked the door. She opened her financial maps. She had seen the load-bearing walls, the pressure points, the keystones holding up the grand arch of his fortune, and she began to draft a plan. Not for divorce, for demolition. She needed an ally, someone she could trust implicitly, someone whose skills complemented her own, someone who hated Michael Pierce almost as much as she now did. She picked up her burner phone, a plain, untraceable device she had bought with cash weeks earlier, and typed a single message to the only number saved in it. Her brother, David Reed. David was the black sheep of the family, a cybersecurity genius, a true savant, living in a cluttered loft in Austin, working as a white hat hacker for a boutique digital security firm. He saw the world in code, lines of breach and protection. He had always despised Michael, calling him a charismatic sociopath from the first time they met at Thanksgiving. Carolyn had once dismissed it as brotherly jealousy. Now she saw it as the clearest truth she'd ever missed. Their relationship was complicated. She had bailed him out of serious trouble years ago, a youthful indiscretion involving the Department of Defense. He owed her, and they both knew it. Her message was simple: Operation Bonaparte. Are you in? It was a code from their childhood, a nod to Napoleon's escape from Elba, their shorthand for a plan that was bold, risky, and required flawless execution. The reply came in under 30 seconds. For you, Caro, I'd burn down the internet, send the coordinates. The plan had a name. Now it needed a timeline. Carolyn pulled up Michael's calendar. In 2 weeks, he was scheduled to fly to their villa in St. Bart's for a solo wellness retreat, supposedly to decompress before the next fiscal quarter. But the flight records she'd already retrieved showed a second ticket. Sienna Laru. They would be together, an ocean away, tangled in sheets Carolyn had paid for. They would be sleeping, and she would be working. For the next 14 days, Carolyn played the part of the devoted, glowing, expectant mother. She feigned cravings for pickles and ice cream, discussed nursery color palettes. She settled on a soothing, pale blue, and smiled warmly whenever Michael touched her stomach. Every smile was a lie. Every touch felt like a spider crawling across her skin. She was a ghost in her own life, observing, collecting, preparing. With methodical precision, she gathered the last vital pieces of the puzzle: the security protocols for the private banking portals in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands, the specific vocal authentication phrases used with his broker at Pictet Group, the seed phrases for multiple cryptocurrency cold storage wallets, which she discovered on a thumb drive hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of The Prince by Machiavelli on his bookshelf. The irony was so sharp it nearly tasted sweet. David worked his end. He set up a chain of virtual private networks, VPNs, that would mask her digital activity through a dozen countries in seconds, making her electronic presence untraceable. He also prepared her clean slate package, a new identity. Anna Miller, a Portuguese passport, a driver's license, and a network of new bank accounts in a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. He was her digital ghost maker. The night before Michael's departure, he was in a particularly generous mood. He presented her with a gift, a velvet box. Inside, a ludicrously large diamond necklace. "For the most beautiful mother-to-be in the world," he said, his voice smooth as silk. Carolyn felt a wave of nausea, and it had nothing to do with pregnancy. She let him clasp it around her neck, the gems cool and heavy against her skin. "It's beautiful, Michael. Thank you. I'll miss you," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "I'll be waiting," she replied, holding his gaze in the mirror. The woman in the reflection was a stranger, a serene smile and eyes as cold as the diamonds on her throat. He would soon be lying next to his mistress. She would be waiting, not for his call, but for the moment she would burn everything he'd built to the ground. The flight to St. Bart's departed from Teterboro at 10:05 p.m. Carolyn watched the private jet's icon move slowly across the flight tracker app on her burner phone until it became a speck over the Atlantic. Michael would be settling in, sipping a vintage champagne. Sienna would be with him. The performance had begun. Carolyn's own performance ended the moment the heavy penthouse door clicked shut behind him. The sweet, docile mask slipped off. She moved through the silent, opulent house, her footsteps echoing in the vastness. She walked to the closet and removed the diamond necklace. She didn't return it to its velvet box. She let it fall onto the thick carpet, where it lay like a glittering serpent. It was never a gift. It was a shackle. She would wear it no longer. Her command center was now her stark white home office, transformed. A second monitor, brought in by David's courier 2 days earlier, sat beside her encrypted laptop. A quiet, cooling fan buzzed softly on the desk. Nearby sat a flask of lukewarm chamomile tea, 3 protein bars, and a high-capacity power bank. This was her war room. The space was cold, sterile, but it buzzed with an electricity she hadn't felt in years. This was the hunt. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her mind cycling through each step with surgical clarity. Beneath that, however, her pulse beat erratically, a quiet thrum of adrenaline and maternal terror. There would be no second chances. The battle would last approximately 8 hours, the window between Michael falling asleep mid-flight and his private bank in Geneva opening for business. She put on her headset and initiated a secure, end-to-end encrypted call to David. "Stage 1. Are you green?" Carolyn's voice was flat, composed. "Green across the board," David replied, his voice crackling slightly, but just as steady. "I'm inside the Pierce Capital network infrastructure right now. It's a fortress, Caro." But he left the key under the mat. "The smart home integration," she said, not asked. "Exactly," David confirmed. He linked everything, security cams, climate controls, even the on-site server, to a single IoT hub for convenience. Its security is tight, but the firmware has a tiny crack. I'm in. I've got full access to the internal network. I can monitor every data packet moving in and out. If a silent alarm trips, I'll kill it before it even thinks of dialing out. "You're invisible." Carolyn took a slow, deep breath. "Okay, David, I'm going in." Her strategy was a cascade, precision-engineered for speed and devastation. She wouldn't just empty one account. She would initiate a synchronized, multi-front financial collapse. She leaned forward, fingers tightening on the keyboard. Every keystroke would be a wound, every confirmation a small detonation. She was not just dismantling his empire. She was reclaiming her own voice, one transaction at a time. Her list was sorted by liquidity and risk. First targets, brokerage accounts, Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. This was the core of his liquid net worth, hundreds of millions in equities, bonds and mutual funds. Accessing them required more than just a password. It demanded a 2-factor authentication, 2FA code, sent to Michael's primary phone. His phone was currently 35,000 feet in the air, set to airplane mode. Useless to him, but not to her. "David," she said, "I'm initiating the login for the Morgan Stanley portal. I need you to intercept the 2FA. Ready when you are. Go." Carolyn typed in the username and complex password. Pierce King 707. She'd figured it out weeks ago. His arrogance was her greatest ally. The portal prompted for a 6-digit code. It sent. "Go." "Got it," David said. A tense 4-second pause. The SMS was rerouted to a virtual number, then to me. "I'm seeing the packet. Code is 7711092. Carolyn's fingers flew. 771092. Access granted. She was in. A dizzying array of numbers, stock symbols and transaction logs filled the screen. A portfolio worth over $310 million. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times. She didn't liquidate everything at once. That would trigger alerts, circuit breakers, system flags. Instead, she initiated a series of strategic block trades. Large positions in highly liquid blue-chip stocks were sold off in carefully spaced transactions and immediately converted to cash. Now came the critical step, moving it. She couldn't wire the funds directly to her new accounts. This was where Michael's own maze of shell corporations came into play. Over the past 3 years, he had occasionally used her maiden name, Carolyn Reed, to set up small LLCs for investment structuring, empty shells, forgotten entities. Until now, Carolyn had quietly and legally taken full control of 3 of them. From the Morgan Stanley core account, She initiated a chain of wire transfers, each just below $1 million, to avoid heightened oversight. The recipient, Reed Strategic Holdings, LLC. The payment notes, consulting services rendered. From there, the money would jump from Reed Strategic to a second shell, then a third, before finally landing in its end destination, a brand new corporate account at a private bank in Liechtenstein, under the name Helvetia Strategic Solutions, an entity wholly controlled by one Anna Miller. It was a painstaking process. Log in, authenticate, execute, wire, again and again, for 2 straight hours. She repeated the exact process with the Goldman Sachs account. The numbers in the Liechtenstein account climbed at a staggering pace. Second target, the offshore strongholds. Pictet Group in Geneva and a smaller bank in the Cayman Islands. This was the old money, the buried money. It was also the hardest to breach. The security at this level was biometric. To access the Pictet account, Michael used voice authentication. "You need to give me your best, Michael," David said, his voice carrying a trace of gallows humor. Carolyn was ready. She had spent weeks compiling hours of Michael's voice recordings, from podcast interviews, keynote presentations, and, most valuably, a file she had captured herself of him dictating investment notes. With open-source AI software, she had stitched together a parsable synthetic voice print. It was still a gamble. She dialed the Pictet private banking hotline. A crisp Swiss-German voice answered. "I need to authorize a transfer," Carolyn replied, her voice masked by advanced voice-altering software David had provided. "Of course, sir. Please state your name and account number." She gave the details. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. And now for vocal authentication. Please state the phrase, 'The mountain air is the clearest.'" This was it. Carolyn clicked a button. The digitally recreated voice of Michael Pierce delivered the phrase, "The mountain air is the clearest." A long, agonizing silence followed. "Verification successful," the banker said. "How may we direct your funds, Mr. Pierce?" A wave of relief swept through her. She quickly dictated the transfer instructions, moving the entire balance, a staggering $200 million to the same Liechtenstein account. Third target, the untraceable cryptocurrency. Michael had boasted that it was his apocalypse insurance. He stored the private keys in cold storage on a Ledger Nano X, the same thumb drive she'd found inside the prints. David walked her through it. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all transferred into a single anonymous wallet. Value, $80 million. Final target, the insult. Sunlight was beginning to stain the horizon. 6:00 a.m. Her window was closing. It was time for the domestic accounts. She logged into their joint checking account. Balance, $786 or $452. This was their life account. Mortgage, staff, her monthly stipend. She drained it, every last cent. Then she paused. She allowed herself a grim smile. She initiated one final transfer, a deposit into the same joint account. Exactly $100. Then she turned to his personal checking account, emptied it, and left him $1, just enough for a cup of coffee or a bus fare. It was over. She leaned back, her body trembling. Her eyes scanned the final tally. She had just liquidated and transferred over $600 million. "David," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "It's done. Phase 1 is complete." "Jesus, Caro," David breathed. "I'm looking at the logs. It's a digital guillotine. You didn't just rob him. You erased him." "Phase 2, she said, already in motion. The data. Michael's in-house server, tucked away in the climate-controlled basement, held his entire life. Every email, every contract, and most importantly, the hidden encrypted partition labeled contingency. His blackmail folder. Now it was hers. "I'm initiating the transfer to the secure cloud," David said. "It's 800 gigs. It'll take about 20 minutes. Once it's done, I'll wipe the source drive. I mean, really wipe it. DoD-level sanitation. Not one byte will survive." While the data flowed, Carolyn moved through the house. She didn't take anything of luxury. Not the jewelry, not the art, not the designer clothes. She packed one suitcase. Essentials only. The burner phones, her new passport, the crypto ledger, the things she had owned before Michael, and the tools of the life she would live after. She walked into the bedroom. His pillows still bore the imprint of his head. She felt nothing. She stepped into the master bathroom and retrieved the positive pregnancy test from the drawer. The one that had started it all. The one with its twin pink lines, defiant and undeniable. She placed it gently on his pillow. Her phone buzzed. A message from David. "Download complete. Wiping the drive now. You need to go, Caro. Now. The digital trail is gone. Now erase the physical one." Carolyn descended the grand staircase for the final time. In the foyer, she paused. Her eyes fell on a massive, framed photo of her and Michael on their wedding day. They looked so happy. It was all a lie. She took the single house key from her purse and set it on the marble table beneath the portrait. Then she walked out the front door, leaving it unlocked. At the bottom of the long, winding drive of their other home, the Greenwich estate she'd driven to in a rental car booked under a false name, an untraceable car service was already waiting. The sun was rising. It was the first day of her new life, and the last day of Michael Pierce's. He just didn't know it yet. Michael Pierce awoke to the gentle rumble of descent into St. Bart's and the syrupy voice of a flight attendant offering a warm towel. He felt invincible. The flight had passed in a blissful, dreamless haze. He'd spent the first 2 hours messaging Sienna, teasing her, before slipping into a deep sleep. He was a king in the clouds, flying toward his mistress, with his perfect life and pregnant wife waiting obediently back home. He disembarked, breezing through the private customs lane. Just beyond, Sienna was waiting. She looked radiant in a white linen dress. He kissed her hard, a possessive, public claim. "The wait is over," he replied, guiding her toward the sleek black Mercedes waiting to take them to the villa. The first hint of trouble was subtle. As they sank into the plush leather seats, Michael pulled out his Amex Centurion card to tip the private concierge. "My apologies, Mr. Pierce," the man said politely. "It has been declined." Michael blinked. "Declined? Impossible. Run it again." The man did. Same result. Michael frowned and produced another card. "A J.P. Morgan Reserve." Declined. Sienna watched, a hint of concern on her face. "Everything okay, darling?" "It's nothing," Michael snapped, color rising in his cheeks. He retrieved a thick stack of euros from his wallet and handed them over. "Probably a network issue." But something cold had settled beneath his skin. He sat in silence on the drive, distracted, distant. He kept checking his phone, opening his banking apps. "Invalid credentials. Please contact customer service." He tried to reset a password. The request for a confirmation code was sent to his email. When Michael tried to access his inbox, he was met with another barrier. "Unusual activity has been detected on your account. Access has been temporarily suspended." By the time they arrived at the grand waterfront villa, Michael's mood had soured completely. He stormed into the study, slamming the door. He needed to speak to his private banker at Morgan Stanley, David Chen. "Mr. Pierce," said the familiar voice. "Good morning. I was expecting your call." "David, what the hell is going on?" Michael snapped. "None of my cards are working. I'm locked out of everything." There was a pause. When David Chen spoke again, his voice was tight, formal. "Michael, according to our logs, A full liquidation of your portfolio was initiated at approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Time last night. All assets were converted to cash and wired out. Michael went pale. What? That's impossible. I was on a plane. We have the logs, David replied, his voice clinical. The login was verified. Two-factor authentication codes were entered. All funds were transferred to a corporate holding account. As of 3:45 a.m. this morning, your account balance with us is 0. 0? Michael repeated. The word tasted foreign. The same pattern was detected at Goldman, David said quietly. And I've just received alerts from our correspondent banks in Geneva and the Cayman Islands. Your offshore accounts, they've been emptied. Michael's phone slipped from his lifeless fingers. He collapsed into a leather chair, his mind spinning. This wasn't a hack. A hacker would have left a mess. This was surgical. This wasn't random. It was personal. And then the thought came. So absurd, so massive, it almost made him laugh. Carolyn. No, impossible. Sweet, docile Carolyn. The woman who planned charity events. The woman who couldn't possibly. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. He called the house line. It rang and rang, unanswered. Panic, an emotion Michael hadn't experienced since adolescence, started to rise in his chest. He called Kenji Tanaka. Kenji! He barked. It's gone. Everything. The money. It's all gone. Damien, Kenji said firmly. Slow down. Tell me what's happening. Michael relayed the story. When he finished, there was a long, heavy silence. It's her, Michael whispered. It has to be her. Your wife? Kenji sounded dubious. Michael, she plans parties, not financial heists. You don't know her, Michael shouted. There was a life before me. She worked in D.C., Oppo Research, forensic... something. He stopped, panting. Forensic accounting. No. God. Opposition research. Kenji's breath caught. Jesus Christ, Michael. That's not a side career. That's a weapon. Stay where you are. I'm going to the penthouse. The waiting was agony. Hours later, Kenji called back. His voice was lead. I'm at the penthouse, Michael. The police are here. I told them you suspected a break-in. And? Michael demanded. There's no forced entry, Kenji said quietly. But she's gone. Her clothes are here, her jewelry, everything except one suitcase. The staff hasn't seen her since the night you left. What did you find? In your office, Kenji said. The safe is open, empty. The copy of the prints is on the floor. The crypto ledger is gone. Michael waited, breath held. In the bedroom, Kenji continued, she left something on your pillow. What was it? Michael rasped. A pregnancy test. Positive. A sound escaped Michael's throat, somewhere between a gasp and a choke. A message. She wasn't just taking the money. She was taking his child, his heir, and the server, Kenji added, his voice low. The server in the basement. It's been wiped, professionally. Whatever was on there, Michael, it's gone. Or rather, someone else has it now. The blackmail files, the leverage, the power, all of it. Find her, Michael whispered, his voice sharp and venomous. I don't care what it costs. Use everything. I want her found, Kenji. I want my son, and I want her to pay. Find Carolyn Reed. The hunt had begun. But Carolyn Reed no longer existed. A week later, a woman named Anna Miller, visibly pregnant, stepped off a train in Lisbon, Portugal. She wore simple clothes, her once glossy hair cut short and dyed a mousy brown. She checked into a modest, prepaid apartment overlooking the Tagus River. That night, she received an encrypted message from David. They're good, Caro. Kenji's team is sharp. They're tracking the money flow. They found the Liechtenstein account. They're moving to freeze it. Anna Miller, F.K. Carolyn Reed, felt a small, cold smile touch her lips. She typed her reply. I know. I expected them to. How much was in it when they froze it? David's reply came back instantly. About $5 million. Anna sipped her herbal tea. Good. That was the bait. The rest is already in cold storage and gold bullion, sitting in a vault in Zurich. Let them have the $5 million. It's their finder's fee. She was not just running. She was redeeming. She opened her new laptop and a secure satellite-linked internet connection. She opened the 800 GB contingency file. She didn't send it to the press. That was messy. That was Michael's way. Her way was surgical. She anonymized a single file, proof of Michael's specific insider trading on a recent pharma deal, and sent it to a dedicated SEC whistleblower portal. She took another file, proof of a U.S. senator's affair, funded by a Pierce Capital slush fund, and sent it directly to the senator's wife, a woman Carolyn knew from her D.C. days to be far more ruthless than her husband. Finally, she took the files detailing Michael's plans to leverage his own partners out of the new fund and sent them, anonymously, to the partners themselves. She closed the laptop. The storm had been unleashed. It wasn't about the money. The money was just the tool. It was about justice. It was about ensuring that man could never, ever use his power to threaten her or her child again. He hadn't just lost his wife. He hadn't just lost his son. He had lost the armor that made him invincible. 3 months later, Anna Miller sat on a small balcony in Lisbon, the bright Portuguese sun warming her face. She held her newborn son, Leo. She was reading the international news on her tablet. Michael Pierce indicted on multiple counts of securities fraud. Senator Davis resigns, citing family reasons. Pierce Capital Partners files for Chapter 11. Bankruptcy following internal coup. She looked down at the sleeping infant in her arms. It's just us now, little one, she whispered. It was never about revenge. It was about resilience. It was about taking back the dignity he had tried to strip from her, one lie at a time. She had been a victim. Then she became a survivor. Now, finally, she was free. This is a story of resilience, of the strength a mother finds, and of the price of betrayal. If Carolyn's story of taking back her power resonated with you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and second chances.